Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Skye, and welcome to the final part in this declutter series. I've been going drawer by drawer, category by category, decluttering bits in my collection, and we are finally here to arguably the most exciting part, eyeshadow palettes. In this series, I have been pretty much swatching everything in my collection. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna do that with eyeshadow palettes, purely because that will take fucking forever. And I don't really want to do that to myself, I'll be honest. I went a teeny bit mad doing my single shadows. Okay, so drawer number 5. As you can see, these are Alex drawers, and this drawer is fucked. It's been fucked for years. I know I could fix it, but I actually like using this as like a footstool. Like I put my foot on there while I'm doing my makeup. I have so many fucking palettes now, and there's so many back there that are just hidden. Things need to change. I put the palettes from my Shop My Stash drawer into here just so we don't have to flip around. Most of these are indie brands. So let's just gut this drawer and put everything on the floor, shall we? This is what we are dealing with. Yeah, let's just, I'm gonna organize these by brand and then we're gonna go through them. So these are all of my palettes organized by brand, and if I counted correctly, I have 41 palettes. I could be wrong, I do have dyscalculia, counting's not my forte. And I think we'll start with the categories where I have the least amount of palettes from, just because that will be a bit easier. I am so overwhelmed looking at this. So the first palette I'm going to talk about is this from Nabla. This is the Cutie palette Coral. It is so cute. I have hit pan in this shade right here, Mandarin. It's a beautiful coral 6 pan. I love the shimmers in here. The only shade that I don't use, funnily enough, is the red because it's satin and I just don't like satin shades. Oh yeah, also disclaimer, if you see any cat hair in these palettes, mind your business. Molly is a long-haired cat. Her hair gets everywhere. I really like this palette. It's really compact and cute. And this is one that I take to my boyfriends all the time. This palette I'm torn on. This is the ColourPop Darth Vader palette. Oh, and also I will let you guys know if there are things that I've received in PR, what was purchased myself, and things that were gifts from friends. This was my first ever ColourPop PR, and it felt really empowering getting this one because fun fact, I have a bit of trauma associated with Star Wars. Even though Greg absolutely loves Star Wars, it's his muse. My abusive ex, Star Wars was his everything as well, and he pretty much ruined me. And I got this before I met Greg and when I was freshly out of that relationship, and it just felt like I was kind of going fuck you, sticking it to him by getting PR from ColourPop. Now I don't support ColourPop anymore. I honestly do not use this palette. I really don't, but I am torn because it does hold like a special place in my heart, as weird as that is to say. I think I am going to be keeping this one. It is sentimental to me, and I'm hoping that I can create some new memories with it, and you know, all of that stuff. I'm a Pisces. I'm a very emotionally attached person when it comes to objects. Next we have this palette from Beauty Bay. This is the Wilderness palette. This palette I bought when Raincloud launched as like a little present to myself. Unfortunately, you can't buy this palette anymore, but I believe Beauty Bay's like earthy palettes have like a lot of repeat shades like from this palette in them. I have not used this palette in a hot minute, but Beauty Bay's 20 pan format like this is just so good. I am high-key regretting not picking up Love Notes. I will be keeping it. The matte formula's great. It has like squishy, putty, metallic formula. It's wonderful. This palette is my only Natasha Denona palette. This is the Love palette. Natasha Denona, I'm not gonna lie, is quite out of my price range, and I feel like her palettes, while they are good quality, I cannot justify spending money on them. but this was a gift from a friend and it just holds a good place in my heart. It gives me good vibes and it's a really pretty colour story. I'm not a big fan of Natasha Denona's like cream to matte formula, like that. It's weird, like this shade's like a weird texture. It's almost like, I don't know, it's gross. The shimmers are very like sophisticated shimmers, nothing like sparkly and intense. The matte formula is really wonderful. I like this palette, I want to keep it. I am tempted by the, what's that one called? Yucca palette. That palette looks gorgeous, but like, do I really need Yucca when I've got this? And you'll see my other grungy palettes. Like, realistically, I don't need Yucca. Next, we have an old love, and this is the Lethal After Dark palette. Lethal Cosmetics have really improved their, like, packaging and, like, eyeshadow formula in the years come since this one. I remember at the time, this formula was the best shimmer formula that Lethal has ever done. Now, I don't think it, like, it's up to par with their current ones from what I have seen and heard. And I used to fucking stand by this palette. I used to love it. I'll be honest, I just never reach for this anymore. I used to love it, but now I just kind of forget about it. Yes, I could pop out these shades and use them as single shadows, but I don't even think to do that. What's another small category? Ooh, I love these. I still love these. They still stand up to the test of time. My beloved Sugar Pill Fun Size palette, the original. I love this. I don't know if this is still available. I know it was very hard to get at one point. Who knows? I hope that it's still available. It really holds a special place in my heart. And I continually reach for this one. A couple of the pastels you do need to build quite a lot, like Twitch and Continue. You do need to work a shitload with them, but I've hit pan in Twitch. Look at that. And this has so many dips in it. I love this palette. I still reach for it. It is a powerhouse in my collection, keeping. I also have the Fun Size 2 palette, and look, Kitty's drinking boba tea. How cute is that? This one is not as used in comparison to my original Fun Size. I think this complements the original really, really nicely. I think because the original is just more pastel-y, and this one is a bit more grungy. I just tend to think about this one a bit more than this. But I still really like the formula and I do use it and it sparks a lot of joy, so I will be keeping both. I also love like pink and green together, like this like chartreuse green. Alright, we're moving on to Geology Cosmetics. First we have the Pilbara palette right here. This is Geology's first release. I always say this every time I show Geology. They are one of my favourite brands. They hold such a special place in my heart and I am friendly with the brand owner. This was sent in PR along with the other Geology palette that I'll talk about. The tones in here just complement me so well. I love Starry Sky. It's such a beautiful iridescent. This palette is so well used and loved. I love this palette. The tones are just really nice. I don't know how else to describe it. It's like the perfect like grungy neutral palette. I also love how sleek and compact this is. Geology are just such a good brand. I am 100% keeping. Love it. And one that I equally love is the Wheat Belt palette. Now this one is a big mama. Like she's a big boy. Compared to Pilbara, I honestly prefer sleeker packaging like this because this one is really hard to store because of how large she is. But I love Wheat Belt. Wheat Belt's beautiful. Funnily enough, I love using the neutrals in here over and over for a really simple look. The greens are beautiful, so are the warm tones. This again complements Pilbara so nicely. I'm a big fan of Geology's formula and I love this brand so much. Keeping 100%. Also in this video, I don't know if I'm gonna be talking about the formula of each palette a lot. If you want to see more like in-depth thoughts, I do have a 2 looks 1 palette review series and I do deep dives into the formula in those videos. But also I haven't done a 2 looks plus review with all of the palettes in my collection, so if there are any palettes that you see in this video that you want a 2 looks plus review, do let me know and I'll try and like get them sorted for you. Alright, the last brand that I only have 2 palettes from is Luna Beauty and we're starting off with the beautiful Moonspell palette. Every time I whip out this palette, I just feel so happy. I'll be honest, the formula has definitely aged. This is no longer available and I got this years ago. The experience of this palette makes me so happy and I bought this at a really dark point in my life that I simply don't think I'll ever let it go. and I do still actually actively use it, so I will be keeping it in my collection. I feel like the day that this expires, or the day that I don't use it anymore, I will declutter it from my collection, but I will be keeping it for like sentimental reasons and for display purposes. Now unfortunately the same can't really be said for the Strawberry Dream palette. I believe this was Luna Beauty's first eyeshadow palette. No, it was the Life's a Drag palette, and then this was their first in this kind of format. Packaging is beautiful. I feel like Luna Beauty have fallen off, for me at least. They just haven't hit as hard as Moonspell in my personal opinion. But this is Strawberry Dream. It does smell a bit like candy strawberries. It's really, really nice. I don't have any complaints about the formula. I really like Luna Beauty's formula. Like the mattes are really creamy, nice to work with, blendable. Some of these shimmers are really wonderful, like Ruby Skies and Blue Diamond. I'll be completely honest with you, I don't really reach for this. I don't really think to reach for it. This was a gift from my friend Katie, and because it was a gift, like I really want to like keep her around. But also like, I have Natasha Denona Love. Like I feel like these two give off the same energy, and these were both like presents from friends. I don't think I mentioned, but my friend Kat bought this for me. I genuinely just don't use it. Like I think to use this palette over this one. But I don't want to let it go. There's a plane going overhead. Can you stop it? I don't know, I'm gonna put this like over here and we'll come back to it. I can't really make a decision yet. All right, next brand that we have to mention. Let's go with Kaleidos. I used to have a lot more palettes from them, but I have decluttered them over the years. So this first one I have right here is the Sashimi City palette. I got this in PR years ago when I was back on their PR list. And this is a really nice, like, neutral little six pan. I do always say that the Futurism palettes in this series that Kaleidos did were the best palettes they ever did, alongside their, like, really big ones, which I do have. They don't do these six pans anymore, which makes me really sad because this was, like, such an iconic era. But with all of that being said, I don't use this anymore. I don't think to reach for it, it just kind of exists in my collection, and I just feel like one of my friends would get a lot more use out of this. I can think of one of my co-workers actually, she wears these tones a lot, and I think she'd look gorgeous in this, so I think I'm gonna sanitize this and give it to her. Another one that was sent in PR years ago, this is the Escape Pod palette. This palette I believe has gone through like some repackaging and maybe reformulation, I'm not too sure. I have the original version, and I also believe this was the first ever palette I ever received in PR, like ever. And I still have it to this day, and honestly I do still use it. It's so old, but the purples in here are wonderful. I love the shimmers. Like, I still do use it and reach for it. Do I reach for it a lot in comparison to my other palettes? Realistically, not as much. Like, I do think to reach for other things more. I'm gonna put that in the maybe pile, actually. Now that I really think about it, I haven't used it in a while, and like, I like looking at it and I have fond memories attached to it, but when I look at the purples, I'm like, but I do have another palette in my collection that I think to use the purples more. Heck, I even use the purples in these Sugar Pill palettes more than the purples in here. Now, the last palette I have from Kaleidos is the best palette they've ever done. Let's be completely honest here. It's the Club Nebula palette they did in collaboration with Angelica Nyqvist. I used to love Angelica Nyqvist. I don't watch her content anymore. My palette is so beat up. You can see like even like the end, like all of that is like rubbed off. But this palette is such a banger. I will never get rid of it. I use this a lot off camera. I love the peachy shades in here. They complement my hair color so well, and the greens. This middle row I don't use as much in comparison to the other two, but this is such a good palette. It's the best palette they've ever done. I wish they would bring back this color story. I stayed up like late to buy this. I think I stayed up until like, what was it, like 3 AM or something to buy it? I do not regret that decision because it is just one of the prettiest color stories. Oh, and this would be really good for Christmas. I think I'm gonna use that in my December Shop My Stash, which I actually need to film soon because it's like December next week. Well, when I'm filming this, December's next week. It probably is December when you're watching this video. Oh, that's weird. Alright, let's go with Fantasy Cosmetica now. They have changed their packaging since. I have the old packaging of like all of these palettes. And part of me really wants to actually get the new packaging because it's so pretty, like stained glass effect, but like I can't justify buying palettes that I already own, you know? But let's go in order of release. So I also received all of these in PR. This is the Druid palette. I remember like my first criticism of this palette was the fact that it's so dark, like, and you know, you can't really see the design that well. But this is like, oh, I love this palette so much. They really started with a banger. This grungy palette is perfect. I love this green in the middle right here and this duochrome. It's just stunning. It actually reminds me of Glam Shop Laser. I love the matte array in here. The two browns are a bit too similar, but I still really love this palette. It's just, oh, it's lovely, beautiful. Now my favourite palette from Fantasy Cosmetica is the Sorcerer palette. This one's fucking slay. They popped off with this one, and you can tell that I love it because I have hit pan in 2 shades. Actually no, 3. Shit, I've hit pan in 3 shades! This shade, there's like a tiny baby pan. I don't think you can see it, but I've hit pan in the other 2 shimmers. I don't like this blue shade and this chaos shade, like I just never use them, but the pinks in here are so fucking saturated and beautiful. The like metallics are a squishy putty formula, so like, to be fair, I did go to town on them, so therefore I hit pan on them really easily, but I love this palette. I always think to reach for it, even if it's just for like one of these pink mattes or like one of these shimmers. I always dip back into this one. And actually, now that I'm looking at the pinks in here, like maybe I should like evaluate, because I clearly love the Sorcerer so much that like, do I really need... Oh my god, actually, those are quite similar. I didn't even think about that. And if I'm thinking about using a romantic palette, I think of a different palette that's also in my collection. You know what? I think I'll give this to my friend Emma. My friend Emma is like the embodiment of like fairy floss cupcake pink, so I think she'd really love this actually. I'm gonna sanitize it and give it to her, and I'm actually seeing her today, so there we go. If you're contemplating picking up a Fantasy Cosmetica palette, I think Sorcerer is the GOAT, the #1. I've only gotten PR from Fantasy Cosmetica twice, and they have really improved since then, and I'm so happy like seeing them grow and evolve, and I really want to buy the Rogue palette. If you have the Rogue palette, let me know your thoughts on it. Maybe I'll go through my collection and see if there are any similarities. Maybe I should try duping it out, but the Rogue palette looks beautiful. I really want to buy that one. Anywhoosies, the last Fantasy Cosmetica palette we have right here is the Bard palette. I just love the theming of Fantasy Cosmetica. It gets my heart going. This one, I originally really loved this and really like dipped into it a lot. Nowadays, I honestly don't think to reach for it. There are other like palettes that I just think to use over this one. And it doesn't mean that this palette's bad, it's actually really good quality. Like, Fantasy Cosmetica are, like, up there, but I just don't really think to use this that much. So I think I will be giving this to a friend. Right, let's move on to Shroud Cosmetics, shall we? First palette we have here is the Peaches and Dreams palette. This is their, I was gonna say it's their latest palette. No, they've come out with a new one, haven't they? Dark Academia, I think? I don't remember. But this is Peaches and Dreams. This palette is so fun and exciting. And also the fact that these are like your standard 24mm pans. Is it 24mm? I don't remember the number. But these are magnetized in there, so I can actually use this as a single shadow palette, and I love the metallics in here. These are the best metallics Shroud has ever done. They are so sparkly, foiled, and duochromy. I reached into this palette specifically for the shimmers. The mattes are great too, don't get me wrong, but I feel like the matte choices are a little bit weirdly grungy. Like, I feel like these shades, in order to complement how pastel, like, the shimmers are, I feel like they should have been a bit more pastel-y. But then I guess if they were leaning too pastel, it would go into creepy cute territory. But I like this palette a lot, big fan of it, keeping. Speaking of creepy cute, we are moving on to the Creepy Cute palette. This is their old packaging back when they were known as Strobe Cosmetics before they changed their name to Shroud. The magnet on this one's actually fucking intense. If you own the original palette, like, do y'all also experience how strong this magnet is? It's ridiculous. Like, I always have bobby pins from my wigs sticking to this because it's so fucking strong. But this is such a workhorse in my collection as well. Honestly, all the pastel palettes that I have. Any palette containing pastels is just like a powerhouse. I love so many different tones of makeup, but pastels always have my heart, and this is definitely still one of the best formulas of pastels out there. I do think that Blend Bunny has like overtaken this one, but I really like this palette a lot. It gets so much use, especially paired with Peaches and Dreams. This last Shroud palette, I don't know if I want to keep it, I'll be honest with you. This used to be such a favorite. This is the Arcana palette, and the theming is so cute, and it's all like, you know, grungy, like jewel tones. And aesthetically, I love this palette, but there's just so much that I would change about it, namely the shimmers. The shimmers in here, honestly, are just that thick, metallic formula that are barely metallic. Like the most metallic one is this one called Chalice. And like looking at it, I do like it. I just wish the formula was updated to have more fun shimmers. Like if this one had the shimmers, like the bright shimmers of Peaches and Dreams, like look how reflective those are in the pan. Like this doesn't even compare. And because of that, I don't think to use this because I do have other grungy palettes in my collection that I use over this one. So I think I will be decluttering that one too. Now, since we mentioned Blend Bunny, let's move on to her. I have 3 Blend Bunny palettes. The first one, and my most used of all of them, is All Done Up. This one, the packaging is so dirty. Oh, don't look at that. Don't, it's actually filthy. I have used the fucking shit out of this one. See, when I say I think of other grungy palettes, I think of this one as probably like my #1 grungy palette. I love how Blend Bunny does this specific layout. I know with Sickly Sweet they did like jumble it up, which, I'm not gonna lie, really upsets me. The shimmers in here are just incredibly metallic and foiled and sparkly. This one has my heart. I use this all the time. I love this one. It's my one of my favorite palettes in my collection, definitely like in the top 3. If you love grungy tones and you like neutrally colors as well, this one is one to get, like if you were to choose a Blend Bunny palette. And also it's a 20 pan palette. I think that's a really good size. I feel like 20 to 24 pans is like the absolute maximum amount of shades. And the reason I say 24 specifically is because my other tied favorite Blend Bunny palette is Lure. Lure is, oh, look at her. And when I say look at her, I mean look at that. This, oh, this is a bit of me. These two are just a bit of me. Like, I love the brights. These are the tones of bright shadows that I love. Like the greens, the aquas, the purples, and the pinky shades in here are stunning, and even this like row of neutrals is incredible. Lure is definitely a Blend Bunny palette I highly recommend. The blues in here are fucking great. The metallics in here aren't as intense as the ones in All Done Up, but they are still pretty damn intense. Like Pearl here is more closer to the texture of the ones in All Done Up. This palette makes me so fucking happy. I look at it and I just smile. It's the colors just make me feel gorgeous and pretty. The layout is beautiful. This is, again, another favorite in my collection. Blend Bunny really fucking popped off with this one. Now, funnily enough, my least favorite Blend Bunny palette I fully thought would be my favorite Blend Bunny palette. It makes me sad because, especially because this palette is no longer available anymore. This is the beautiful Surge palette. Mine actually has some damage at the top here because it's a bit too big for my drawers, that like sometimes it kind of like gets scuffed at the top from the other drawer, but we move through. This palette is really beautiful. This is Blend Bunny's like massive palette format, and I'll be honest, the main reason I don't really reach for this is because it's just really fucking overwhelming to look at. Like, it's beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it is really just too much for me. I'm not really a big palette person, and you may be thinking, well, why did you buy Surge? Because this was my white, like, not a white whale, I shouldn't call it a white whale, but like this one, it was on my mind for so long. And the main reason I held off buying it was because I get overwhelmed at big palettes. And now that I have this palette, it just affirms, yes, Skye, you do get overwhelmed with big palettes. This was the first time that Blend Bunny ever did shimmers in their palettes, and you can tell because these shimmers, apart from these two, are shit. They're just not good. Like, even this shade Taboo, like, there's nothing. Like, there's nothing. Where's the shan? Where's the fucking shan? It's just not there, but I am mainly here for the mattes and the neons. The neons are quite difficult to work with, but you can work with them. The greens in here I like, the purples I love, and this shade is just really, like, intense and vibrant. I don't really use this palette all too much, and honestly, like, the purples, when I think of using purples, I genuinely just think of using Lure, because it has this, like, this row of purples that it's just nicer in this palette than this one. But I'm not ready to give up Surge. I feel like she deserves better in my collection, but not deserves better as in I want to move on from you. She deserves better as in I need to change and I need to make an effort for you, especially because this is no longer available and so many people adore this palette and I really want to be that person. I want to fall in love with her. I think I'm gonna keep it in my collection for another round, and if not, like, if I still barely use it, I might just have to move on. And that breaks my heart because I look at this and it's beautiful, but, you know, I'm willing to give it a second chance. I really am. Because it's Blend Bunny. Blend Bunny has one of my favourite eyeshadow formulas. I want to make an effort for her. Alright, the next brand we're going to talk about is Alter Ego. These were all sent to me in PR. And let's start off with this palette, the Midsummer palette. So this one, I don't know which one it's meant to dupe. I think it's an ABH palette called like Nouveau or something. I don't really know. And I did test this palette out very thoroughly for my Alter Ego like brand review video. And that video was still fairly recent, so like all the information is still fresh on my mind. But since that video, I have not really thought to reach for this. Like, the palette is nice. Like, it is a nice neutral palette. This shade Festival is, like, the prettiest shade in the palette. It's so, like, metallic and bright. I don't think to use this, and I feel like one of my friends would really enjoy this. I've got some other neutral palettes in my collection that I just think to reach over this one. Like, this one doesn't really stand out in my collection, but I know someone else would really like it, so I will be giving that to a friend. Speaking of another one that is objectively really beautiful, and if anything, I thought this was actually going to be my favourite Alter Ego palette. This is the Sakura palette, and I believe this is meant to be duping the Natasha Denona Retro Glam? Retro palette? Retro Glam? One of those ones. But I'll be honest with you, I've only reached for this palette twice since owning it, and I've only dipped into it for these neutrals. I have not even touched the rest of the palette. The rest of the palette I've only touched via swatching. And one of my friends, Ems, she actually like saw me swatch this palette and was like, oh my god, I really want that. And she tried to buy it on the website, but it was sold out, so she couldn't. And you know what? Considering I don't really feel like I will give this enough love, I'm gonna give it to Ems as a present. I just think for me, when I have so many palettes in my collection and I just know that they're not getting love, I feel guilty and I don't like the thought of like leaving palettes unloved and untouched. It's just, I don't know, it makes me feel really sad and I don't like that. So if I can give a palette to a friend, like, Molly! Hello? Oh, hi! Do you want to look at the pretty makeup? Okay, Molly, can I film the video? No. Molly actually really likes makeup. Like, she loves, like, being in my office, and she even, like, sleeps in my drawers. She opens my eyeshadow palette drawer and sleeps in it. That's why there's cat hair in it. Molly! But yeah, like I was saying, this palette I'm gonna give to my friend Ems. She will definitely give it a lot more love than I ever will. And that alone makes me happy, and I feel like content giving this to a new home. So this palette is the Mirage palette from Alter Ego. I believe this is duping the Huda Beauty Empowered palette. I have one hand stroking Molly and one hand holding the palette. This one, I just really didn't expect to love so much. I especially love it for these tones over here, and I really like the cream shadows and the shimmers in here. The neutrals are really lovely. It's just a nice palette. I don't know how to describe it. The tones just really complement me, and I really like the, like, neutrally, like, deep shades in here too. It's just a... Molly... What? Mirage is also Molly approved, apparently. So yeah, this was a very unexpected favourite, but I am 100% keeping Mirage. It is wonderful. This is how Molly is sitting on me, by the way. Do you want to say hello? Do you want to say hello to everybody? Look over here.
Look over here. Yes.
Any whoosies, back to the makeup. This is my favorite alter ego palette, and this one has skyrocketed into like my top favorite palettes. Okay, genuinely, how am I supposed to film a video when I have this? How am I supposed to film when I have you here?
What am I supposed to do?
Honestly, it's like having a baby.
You are my child. Yes, you are. You're my baby.
If you're curious, by the way, she's 6 years old. So she's like a full-grown adult. But you're still very much a baby. And yes, she has 2 collars on, in case you can see that.
Hello? Hi.
Oi! Molly! Oh, now Georgie's coming. Georgie! This is the cat that went missing for 11 months. Look at this chubby boy. Okay, well, Molly's now left, so I think it's time to get back to makeup. I'm so sorry. Oh, Georgie! George? George? What the hell? That's why there's cat hair in that drawer specifically. God, the cats just love alter ego. Georgie! I love you, but you need to move. Anyways, like I was saying, this is the Alter Ego Coastal palette, and this one is duping the Huda Beauty. George! Now he's just knocking down the pile. Oh, bloody hell! If you knock down that tripod, boy, I'm gonna be annoyed. This one is duping the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palette, I think. This one I literally adore. The pinky mauvey rose tones in here, like the dusty tones, really make my heart sing. It's so romantic. The shimmers in here, except for a couple, like this shade, and this shade, are not that great, but the other ones are so hypermetallic and sparkly and stunning. Georgie thinks the same. I'm trying so hard to feel. Georgia! Oi! Really? I'm just gonna use your bum as a backdrop. I was originally actually going to buy the original Huda Beauty palette, but now that I have this one, I am so happy. The quality is outstanding. It's great. Honestly, I highly recommend this palette 100% for alter ego. Like, if you like warmer tones, I think Mirage is your best friend. And if you like cooler tones, then Coastal has you covered. Like, these are literally opposite ends of the spectrum, and they're both great. And I think that's solidified that this 18-pan format from Alter Ego is my favorite. All right, moving on to Auden's Eye. Now, Auden's Eye used to be my love, my muse in makeup. I used to want to collect everything that they, like, ever had, but that quickly stopped because they released so much, and I don't really want to buy things just for the sake of it. I like to have a very purposeful collection. I used to want to have a completionist collection, but now I just want more purposeful. So let's start off with 6-pan palettes, shall we? This is the mini Skye palette. This was a Christmas gift from a family member a few years ago, and I really liked this back then, but not gonna lie, nowadays I don't really dip into it that much. I really don't. I don't think to use it, so I think this will have to go to a new home.
Such a good boy. Oh look, hello! Hi, look at everyone. Say hello to everyone.
Continuing on with the mini palettes, this is the mini Forest palette. This was my favorite, like, mini Auden's Eye palette out of the lot of them. It reminds me of Legend of Zelda. But now, like, I like the tones in here, I like these greens, but if I'm gonna reach for a green Auden's Eye palette, I'm gonna reach for Flora's Story. This was the collaboration they did with Makeup Just for Fun, and this is like the only Auden's Eye palette I actively reach for. Wow, my lighting does not really show this true to colour. This, like, Perfect World collection that they did was beautiful, and I remember this actually launched on Valentine's Day, and I bought this whilst I was out on a date with Greg. I was like, hold on babe, just gotta purchase a palette. So, like, if I'm gonna reach for, like, a more greeny toned Auden's Eye palette, Flora's Story has my heart. I really love it. I'm just a green goblin at heart, and Amanda did a really good job with this palette. It's beautiful. I really love it. And then we have some OG palettes. Oh man. First we have the Elva palette. This was one of their first palettes they've ever done, and they've evolved so much from this. This one has a lot of pretty neutrally shimmers in here, and I really like looking at. This is one of those situations where I love looking at it, but practically do I really use this that much nowadays? I could keep it in like a makeup bag that I keep at Greg's place. That video will be coming soon. I mention that all the time. Oh my god, this is so cursed. I mention about like wanting to film that video, but I just keep forgetting. But like, I feel like this one's a bit too big. Like, realistically, I'll probably keep this one at Greg's place. And this served a good purpose and it is really pretty, but I really don't dip into it much nowadays. So I think I'll get rid of you. Bless her. This one again used to be a favorite palette of mine a few years ago. This is the Elva 2 palette. I was so in love with this. You can see these two greens are my favorite like tones of greens. If anybody has like a single shadow dupe of green elves, please let me know, because this is one of the prettiest like shades of green ever. It's got the right amount of like mintiness with the right amount of warmth. Like, I don't think that this palette, like, you think that this shade would be similar, but it's not. It's not as green, it's a bit more like lighter. They actually look more similar on camera than they actually do, but the minute differences do make a difference. This palette holds a special place in my heart, but nowadays it's not really one that I reach for. I love looking at it, it makes me feel happy. I probably will keep this for makeup sentimental value, but I'm not going to keep this in my collection, so technically this is going to be decluttered. Okay, final brand we have to mention, and it's the brand that I have 9 eyeshadow palettes from, and it is Glisten Cosmetics. Glisten are another one of my all-time favorite brands, and I am so grateful that the majority of the palettes that I have from Glisten were sent in PR. I am on their PR list, and that's never gonna get old to me. Like, it's truly a dream come true. Should we go in palette release order? I think that would be smart. Right, I don't think I have the release order perfectly correct, but I am just gonna kind of just go with it. So the first palette we have is the Sandra Rose mini palette. This one I did purchase myself. It is just a mini version of their original Sandra Rose palette with a bit of a twist, because there is a multi-chrome in here right there. I have rearranged mine to be in this format. It did have a different format beforehand, but I prefer it like this. All of Glamenatrix's palettes are magnetized, so you can swap them out and shit and use them as singles. This color story is so romantic, makes me think of spring. I really like it a lot. And the tiny pans are just so fucking cute. Like, they're teeny. Next we have You Beauty. This one I was screaming. This was the palette that got me on their PR list, and I love it. It's all Australian slang, and it just makes me feel like home. It feels like home. This colour story does remind me a lot of Australia. Like, they really popped off with this one. I mostly use the multi-chromes in this palette. Like, I love Flaming Galar, G'day, and Old Mate. The final row is the one that I use the most. The colour story is different, but it's different in a good way. Makes me really happy. Love her. By the way, I don't think I'm going to be decluttering any of my Glamenatrix palettes. I'll just tell you straight up. But I'm still showing them to you because they're part of my collection, aren't they? Next we have Nocturnal. This one's beautiful. Though this packaging does get quite like fingerprinty because it's like a faux... Is it a suede? Or like a faux leather? I actually don't know. But this palette is absolutely gorgeous. The experience of it is just so pretty. I do feel like the other palettes in this kind of like format are a bit like, they feel a bit heavier and a bit more higher quality, but still this is a nice experience. And this is a beautiful grungy palette. This is one of the grungy palettes that I immediately think of to use. I do feel like that the shimmers in other Glamenatrix's palettes are a bit better. Like Night Vision, it's a nice duochrome, but like it's a bit thin, I would say. I don't really give a shit about that. Like, I love the formula of all of this. The color story makes me so happy, and I am loving it. The next palette that came in that format is Glamorous. This one is really nice feeling. I feel like they really like polished like the Nocturnal packaging when it came to Glamorous. This is what this palette looks like. Now, not gonna lie, when I think Glamorous, I don't think of this kind of color story, but I like this color story a lot. The berries in here, like this quad, I really like. There are not too many shimmers in here. I'm not a big fan of the shades Belle and Twinkle, I'm not gonna lie. Like, they're alright, but I reach into this palette mostly for the mattes. Opulence is beautiful. And actually, could that be like an almost similar shade for my beloved? No, it is different. This is the issue when it comes to colours. I can spot very minute differences, and that is still a bit different. Out of all my Glamonatrix palettes, this is my least used, I'll be honest with you. But I really want to dip back into her. I'm pretty sure Nearly Natural came out next, but I just want to keep them in the formats. So now we have Into the Night. This one I always forget the name. I always think it's Into the Dark or After Dark or something, and not Into the Night. I don't know why, that's maybe just a me thing. This one is an unexpected favourite. Oh, I just realised this shade is cracked. I know. Cleo. When I first saw this colour story, I was kind of like, it's weird. Like, it's just a bit fucking weird, I'm not gonna lie. But it is weird in the best way possible. If you cover up this quad right here, this is a gorgeous, deep, grungy, sultry palette. But then these shades here bring in a lot of like brightness and like different tones in here. Truly one of the most unique palettes I've ever seen. This silver shade right here is literally liquid metal. I love Into the Night. I think this one is extremely underrated. Don't show the audience your bum hole. I don't think they want to see that, gamer. Molly likes Into the Night too. I will say that Glamonatrix's palettes are usually like fairly limited edition. Like they kind of cycle through them and they don't really like keep them around for that long, which makes me really sad because like I honestly love all of their palettes. I think that all of them should be permanent. I could be making that up. I just know that they have like a thing of like eventually like moving stock out. I guess maybe like it is expensive to keep like all the palettes and stock and stuff. But regardless, I think that Glamonatrix makes the best colour stories. Now we have, I'm just gonna pretend she's not there. Now we're moving on to my favourite Glamonatrix palette. Is this my favourite? No, I can't say that because I love all of them, but Nearly Natural is one of the best palettes to ever exist. It's still my top favourite, and again, this is a palette I didn't think that I would love this much. It is the perfect... Molly, please, I don't want to get your bum hair in the oh, okay, she's sitting. Right, I'm gonna switch this format at the end because Molly is just wanting all the attention. Hang on. I apologise for switching up this format, but Molly keeps walking over where I want to film. So I just, come here. So Nearly Natural is an absolute stunner, just like Molly. It may not look like much, but the tones in here are really, really unique. We've got olive tones, mauves, neutral browns, cool tones, pale golds, rose golds. Just this entire palette is just beautiful. It is the ultimate neutral palette in my eyes. The metallics in here are foiled, but they are so intense and sparkly still. Like, I love when metallics are foiled and also, like, sparkly. That's the best of both worlds to me. I feel gorgeous every time I wear this palette. It just complements my, like, it just complements my tones really nicely, and I love the deep mattes in here. Glamonatrix's deep matte formula is incredible. Same as Blend Bunny, same as Fantasy Cosmetica, same as Geology 2. Like, their deep matte formula is just brilliant. And the only thing I would change about this palette is just to have like one more deep matte. 3 palettes left to go! This next palette is Sugar and Spice, and I was actually meant to get this in PR, but it got lost in the mail, so I did end up buying it myself, because look at it! Again, grungy neutrals with some pastels and beautiful, intense multichromes. Glamonatrix does multichromes just so beautifully. They are very akin to Terra Moons. These grungy neutrals are very unique. I wish there weren't 2 beigey mattes in here. Like, we could have just had one if you really wanted one of them. This could have been like a different like tone of like murky like brown, or even like a purpley brown. I used this a lot during Halloween, and I'm really glad that I did end up buying it, because if I didn't have this in my collection, I would surely have missed out. I was feeling major FOMO. I am so happy that this is in my collection. Just this shade Fennel especially, like look at it in the mirror. Beautiful. Glamonatrix knows how to make some good fucking neutrals. Speaking of good fucking neutrals, may I introduce you to Rich Romantic, which I always accidentally call Rich Romance.
I'm silly.
This one is just the perfect rosy, like mauvey, multi-chrome, magical romantic palette. It is a rich romantic palette. They named it perfectly. This also complements Sugar and Spice really beautifully. Dominatrix actually said to me that they were actually working on these at the same time, hence why it was kind of like, well, they kind of complement each other really nicely. Like, they're not meant to be sister palettes, but like, you know, they work together beautifully, you know? The multi-chromes in this one are absolutely ridiculous. I love this shade Lover. It is just such a perfect, like, burgundy shade. I love the rich red, like, flashes that these multi-chromes have. Overall, just a standout palette. And this is the palette that I was mentioning earlier when I said that if I was gonna reach for a pink palette, I don't think of Moonspell. I think of, like, Rich Romantic and, you know, Natasha Denona and Fantasy Cosmetica. Like, I would much rather reach for those over this one. I also love this format that Glaminatrix do. I hope they keep, like, this kind of format around because it's such a good size. And the mirror's really big too, like it's really good for travel. And the final palette I have from Glaminatrix, I haven't actually showed this on my channel officially yet, so this is the debut of it. This is a limited edition Christmas holiday palette, and this is the Fairy Lights palette. It's just a baby version of these. Like, oh, I love it. This is a 6-pan of beautiful, neutral, shimmery, sparkly goodness. The shade Cracker actually has holographic sparkles in it. Let me know if you'd like me to do a whole dedicated video on this one. I do know that it's not, like, it's very limited edition. I did purchase this one myself as well because they weren't actually sending this one out in PR, and I was like, I'ma be the first one to get it. I literally was refreshing the site when they launched, just waiting. I was ready. I just love these neutral tones that they have in here. I think this honestly complements like Nearly Natural so beautifully and so many of their other palettes. And it just makes me very happy, and it's just in such a cute little 6-pan. And Fairy Lights is the perfect name for it. Like, I love a Christmas release that isn't overtly Christmassy, because I'm not really a big Christmassy themed boy. Halloween though, that's a different story. But Christmas, I prefer something like this, like Fairy Lights, because that could be like any time of year, you know? The only Glaminatrix palette I do not own, apart from the Sandra Rose original, but I have the, like, you know, the remastered mini, so technically that doesn't really count, but the only other Glaminatrix palette I don't own is the, oh, what was it called? It was their not Halloween, it was their Christmas palette a couple years ago. Sleigh Bells? I don't know. Glaminatrix, please, if you are watching this video, please come out with a Halloween palette next year. I literally beg. I fucking beg. Any whoosies, before we wrap things up, we still do have to decide on the Glaze Escape Pod palette. Let me just whip out some palettes that just have purples in them, because I think to use this palette for the purples specifically. Like, we've got this one. The purples are a bit different though. Okay, when I think purples, I mainly think of Lure. And like these purples are like so similar to these ones. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I also have these shades in like Druid and Wilderness. Like, Wilderness, like, I really shouldn't keep it. Like, I don't reach for it much anymore. I like the concept of it and I have such strong memories, but I don't think I'll keep it around. I think I'm gonna be decluttering this one, but keeping it in like a separate area for display purposes, because it does hold a lot of special memories for me. And with that being said, let's look at all the palettes that I have decluttered. This is actually a lot of fucking palettes. I have decluttered 12 palettes. I truly thought I was only gonna get rid of like 2 palettes in this entire like declutter video. Like, I was genuinely under the impression it would probably just be these 2 and maybe like this one. But everything else, like, I'm happy, you know? I'm actually very pleased. So let's move into the drawers and put my makeup away and see how everything fits! I can't be bothered cleaning out these drawers. My cleaning supplies are downstairs and I am very lazy. I will clean this another day. Okay, that was kind of painful to watch. However, I really love how this looks. I think this is a lot more refreshed, a lot more, like, I can see everything now, nothing's hiding in the back. Beat Belt, unfortunately, is such an awkward size. Same with Blend Bunny Surge. I have to put it at an angle like this, otherwise I cannot close my drawer. My Roman Empire is the fact that necklaces will always have the back turning to the front. Fucking hate it. So that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Do let me know, did you enjoy this declutter series? I have had so much fun making it, and I feel like my collection is a lot more manageable now. However, stay tuned because we will be doing a bonus video completely dedicated to my single shadow iridescence. But yeah, I am really happy. I feel like a weight's been lifted off my shoulders. I decluttered quite a bit of makeup actually, and all of it will be going to good homes with my friends, completely sanitized and all of that. Some things are just too old to even be salvaged, and those will unfortunately have to be taken out for recycling. It just feels really nice. It feels like I'm ending this year off with just a smooth, clean slate. If you'd like to see more makeup content from me, you can follow me on my Instagram. It's faerie.skye right here. I post all my looks there and I'm active on there every single day. And if you'd like to support me further, I do have my own small business, Rain Cloud Candles Co. We're a small queer-owned business based in the UK, and we make handmade candles and wax melts. The link to shop will be down below, along with our social media if you'd like to support us. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to have you here, and as always, stay safe, wash your hands, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!